Hello, world. This is our virtual book launch for Sex Shamans. Our co-authors are gathering, and we're going to give you a transmission and an infusion of our enthusiasm about this baby's new release. I'm KamalaDevi, and you'll get to hear from each of these handful of sex shamans from around the world with a couple of different juicy questions that I threw together to give you an introduction. And the first is, well, tell us first your name and your chapter, and what's the message that you're most excited about in your decision to be like, yes, I'm gonna write this chapter, and I'm gonna share this message with the world. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Sex Shamans is a compilation of true stories, and they're autobiographical, personal narratives, and they're the stories of sacred sexual awakening. So I invite you to tell us, like, what pulled you to reveal yourself in this narrative, and what was it that you wanted the message to get out to the world? And why don't we start with you, Laurie, since this was your question.
Okay, so I'm Laurie Handlers, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm a New Yorker, can't be anything but, even if I tried. So for me, my chapter is 2, and it's called Tales of a Juicy Crone, because I am a crone and I am juicy. I'm definitely over 55. And the thing what excited me about being a part of this project and writing my story was, one, I had a very early sexual awakening. Like, I awakened to my body and to touching myself and feeling pleasure when I was about 5. I mean, I don't remember being prenatal, so I'm sure I touched myself then, but I don't have any memory of that. So I do remember touching myself in the bathroom and my mother yelling up to me. I describe it in the chapter. So one is that I think I had a very early awakening to sex, to sexuality. And 2, but the message I'm most excited to tell people is not stop. Don't stop. Don't stop touching yourself. Don't stop having people touch you. Don't stop having sex. People think when they hit 50 or something like that they're going to dry up and it's all going to go away, and hormonally they're not going to be able to have sex anymore, and that's wrong. And that's the message that I want to bring to the world. Don't stop. It keeps you young. It keeps you juicy. It keeps all the cocktail of serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin, and dopamine running through your system, and you need that.
Woohoo!
So that's my message.
Beautiful, Laurie.
Thank you.
You're muted, KamalaDevi.
So I thought of you, Laurie, when I was being interviewed for the book. Somebody said, are all the co-authors like young and beautiful and perfect models? And I was like, oh, you need to meet the diversity of this cast. Like, we are, from around the world, all walks of life, showing that sex transcends all levels, all lines, all ages, all colors. So yes.
So when I was writing my chapter, I think we started 2 years ago. So I was 70. So now I'm 72, and still my sex life is juicier than it was when I was 30. So whatever people have a belief about, I'm here to say that it's a myth. Like, just find your pleasure. Transformation exists within pleasure. Everything you need and all the food you need exists within pleasure. Just keep having it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. Why else did you choose to, who wants to share their message next? Crystal Dawn.
Okay, I'll go next. So I'm Crystal Dawn Morris. I live in Sedona, Arizona. And my chapter is called Birthing a New Reality. And the thing that I'm most excited about is really for people to awaken and know that they are the creator of their own experience. So I called it Birthing a New Reality for a lot of reasons, because I left home at 16 after having a spiritual awakening to imagining that I could create a new reality in, in a few years, and it's actually happening. The reality I imagined I was going to create in a couple of years is happening now, and I just turned 65. So I left home at 16 thinking, by the time I'm 18.
Crystal Dawn, can you hold your camera still? I'm getting dizzy. I know how enthusiastic you are, but you got it.
Sorry about that. I'll do that. Sorry. So I left home at 16 thinking that, in a couple of years I could find and create this ecstatic experience that I had had in the spiritual awakening. And it's taken almost 50 years to really get all the parts, both internally and externally, aligned to where the reality I imagined I would be living is really, I am living it now. And I think the message that I want people to get is that they are the creator of their reality, and that part of what Tantra teaches and what we teach in ISTA, and part of being a sexual shaman, is recognizing that you are that, not you the personality or the ego, but you the divine are the sovereign being that is creating your reality. And I think when people start to get a taste of that, they recognize that the possibilities are endless, and that they can really create the life that they long to live and that they imagine is possible, and that will fill them with a sense of purpose and pleasure and meaningfulness and intimacy and love and freedom. And that it's really accessible, and that it doesn't have to take 50 years. And when I'm meeting I seem to be meeting a lot of 20-somethings now who seem to have it kind of a more of an insight into that possibility. And I really resonate with those people, prepare the way. And so I know that they have a taste of that, and it's wonderful to see them coming to our trainings and getting this so early on. If I could have had the information we're sharing now when I was 20-something, that would have been awesome. So that's the thing I'm most excited about. And I'm also a grandmother, and my oldest grandchild is 22, and so he is one of those 20-somethings. And this idea that my grandchildren are now entering into this world, and they can start recognizing that they're co-creators of their own reality. And just once people have that information and kind of start to have that feeling of sovereignty, just how powerful it is. That's the message I want people to get.
Truth. Thank you. Good. So, Ria, I think I'm going to call on you next, because it's just so compelling to see you looking like a movie star with a camera in the background.
Yay! So honored to be here and to be a part of this project. My chapter is called My Second Puberty. And it's really because my big heartbreak in life happened when I was 11, when I picked up and moved from Japan, where I was born and raised, my Buddhist Japanese father and Jewish American mother, and grew up in Jersey during my pubescent and puberty years, which were really tough, not just cross-culturally, but also coming into my sexual awakening, my hormones, my breasts getting bigger, getting my moon for the first time. It was such a big deal that when I found myself coming into sacred sexuality and shamanism and my ISTA journey, it felt like this second time around of really having a big breakthrough, a big like breakdown and then a breakthrough. And something you've actually said to me, KamalaDevi, that I hold dear and near to my heart is, you said I do messy human really well. And so it was my way of showing the world in less than 10 pages how to like own the messiness of human. And I feel you, Laurie. A lot of the chapter takes place when I lived in New York City. and that whole journey. So, yeah, I'm just really honored to be a part of something so incredible.
I love the irony of you representing Messy Human as you're all dressed up for a photo shoot today.
Yes, I'm shape-shifting and I'm shamanic with my messiness.
Love it. Thank you. Sweet. Let's hear from Rafa.
Hello. Hello, everybody, and thanks, KamalaDevi, for making this happen. It's exciting. My name is Rafael Manacorda, and I'm originally from Rome, although I spent a lot of my life in Barcelona, where I am right now talking to you. So it's interesting that you asked us to kind of like, what's the message? Because in a way, the title of my chapter is that. The title of my chapter in the book is "If You Want, You Can," and that's the core of the message that I express in that title. But it's not so much of a philosophical thing, but rather really a lived experience for me. What I narrate in the chapter, which I won't reveal much, but is really my experience of going for the most crazy options in life that I didn't even know that I had. Just like really, as Alice in Wonderland says, like imagining 6 impossible things before breakfast and then trying to do them. And it just worked. And when I say it worked, I want to really share, and it's also a good part of my chapter, that all those incredible experiences didn't happen, just with love and light. There is a fair amount of darkness, a fair amount of failure, and a fair amount of suffering involved. At least there was for me. And this is also something that I would like to weave in as part of my message. It's like, it's gonna get dark, it's gonna get intense, and yet, if you want, you can, and you're going to get there. So to conclude, I will say that, after having gone through some pretty crazy times that I explain in the chapter of the book, I realized that actually one of my, or perhaps my biggest no-go area, where I held the most fears and contractions, was sexuality. So that's why my journey of, if I want, I can, then became a journey of my own sexual awakening and liberation, and the connection between my sex, my sexuality, and my spirit, and all the other polar opposites inside. So that's what I write about, and it's still happening in the making. So maybe, at some point there will be a part 2.
Yeah, I think we're all works in progress, and this is sort of this like snapshot of this really epic story for all of us. But you bring up something else that's transpersonal, which is the dark and the light, and I think that is woven through everybody's story, just how deeply, in shamanism we're embracing the polarity, but also to experience the enlightenment, there has to be this, not has to be, but we are also on a path of endarkenment. So thank you for bringing up the shadow pieces.
Hell yeah.
Let's hear from Steph and then Mia. Okay, we're unmuting you. 1 second.
Unmuted.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Stephanie and I live in Melbourne, and very proud to be part of this. I'm in chapter 6, fully expressed in the body. And that really, I guess, wraps up everything that I am about and what this chapter's about. That I started out as in my very conservative upbringing, and had a very conservative start out to life. Well, I tried to, but I kept hitting up against a brick wall. And the chapter is about how I denied my inner truth. I was trying to fit in. I was trying to conform to what society had me groomed for. And it never sat with me. And yet I did try. I had a couple of marriages, and then I became a single parent. My 2 kids are now adults, and every aspect of my life hit against a brick wall. So I guess for me, the message in this story is about that we mustn't deny our truth. We mustn't deny the call that is drawing us to fulfill our soul's purpose in this lifetime. And I, for one, know that it feels like the universe was calling me to a purpose that I was trying to deny, trying to step away from, until I could not deny that any longer. I could not avoid the fact that I had this passion and this vitality that just was overflowing through my body. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to shut it down until I surrendered to that. And I guess my message is that we can step out, make a choice, and have that happen in full heartfelt consciousness from a place of power and choice, rather than some of my experiences were I was down on my knees before I gave in, if you like, to this beautiful, deep journey of awakening. So that's really what my chapter is about. That
I love it. It's like you point to this inevitable unfolding that's happening in everyone, and you're like the model of, you can go kicking and screaming, or you might as well have fun when you're growing, because it's going to happen.
Celebrate it. Yeah. Celebrate it all. And I think my biggest challenge was sharing this with my kids, my adult kids.
And I'm going to ask that question next, but maybe I'll ask you first, because I want to hear what everybody else, their challenge in the, who you're coming out with these stories. I know right now we're just giving you a behind the scene glimpse, but when we read these stories and we're putting them out there, it's going to have an impact on how people see us. And I want to hear what impact that's had on all of you. But I want to go to Mia next, and it's appropriate because Mia actually wrote the epilogue to the book in art and poetry. And I want to hear what your transmission was, reason for doing it.
So yeah, I'm Mia. I wrote the epilogue, and actually before I did that, I wrote a whole autobiographical chapter that then got suddenly swift up into this photographic poetry essay, and it's called My Fucking God. And the message is very clear if you look at it, because it is about having sacredness, claiming the sacredness of the body back. So it's all in this like visual form of worship to me. And it was part of a crazy summer in Berlin and a beautiful photographic journey that I had with a photographer, and then woven into like a jungle trip into Peru, where I really claimed like, okay, this is actually coming through my pores, and I can't help but activate people just with my presence and just with my body being in the room. And it's a statement on nudity as well, not being something separate from God and not being something separate from our innate nature and our innate way to worship being alive.
It's such a stunning piece. I'm so proud of all of these pieces, but that is an exclamation point for the book. It's really powerful. So Steph, let's come back to you and tell us, and each of you, maybe just who it was hardest to come out to when you were writing this. And you mentioned your son.
Yes, I have 2 adult children, a son and a daughter, and I guess that was my main thing as I was writing it. A couple of the drafts before it was submitted properly, I checked in with my kids to make sure that they were okay with this, because here I was coming out to the world in this way. And of course, we've had a ride with this whole journey of mine that they were caught up in, whether they liked it or not. So that was really important to me. That wasn't actually a challenge. It was very beautiful, and that's part of a whole story in itself. Something I do want to mention, though, is my mother, who was at the time around 80. It was before the book came out, and she was around 80 and had been married to my dad for 60 years. And she sat me down in a cafe and she said, and she thought she was challenging me because she'd heard from the family members that I was involved with something a bit saucy. And she said, "So, Stephanie, what are you doing these days?" And I said, "So, Mum, would you like to have a more fulfilling, deeper, more intimate connection with Dad?" And she said, "After 60 years, no." And I said, "Well, I guess you're not in my target market, but that's what I do."
Beautiful. That's that's great. So what other responses have we had? And maybe we'll kind of go around in reverse order. So I think we heard from Rafa.
Hi again. So I think deep down, I am a little bit of an exhibitionist, and I enjoy exposing, you know, the darkest corners of my life. So this coming out thing, it's pleasurable for me. I wouldn't say it was a challenge in that sense, but I will say that part of my chapter also reveals a deep controversy or conflict that I went through with a school, an institution that was very important for me on many levels, also on a spiritual level. So that element of spiritual war, or, you know, like when you're on a path and then realize that maybe, you know, didn't suit me on a deep level. And that was a very difficult moment for me, where in many occasions I felt like I had lost my north, I had lost my compass. So to expose that was delicate, was sensitive, and it's a little bit like touching, you know, a sore spot that hurts a little, but it feels good to touch it at the end of the day. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do that and to kind of like put some air in some of those, you know, remote corners that were dusty in my life.
Well said. Thank you. Ria.
Yay. Well, the hardest person to come out to was my very Japanese 74-year-old dad, but he doesn't read English, so kind of dodged that bullet. But I came out to him in Japan last year because I was organizing ISTA in Japan. And I remember being in his house on the second floor, and I couldn't face him. I just didn't have the words or the language. So I went upstairs and I wrote him an email in English for 2 pages. And I went downstairs, tapped him on the shoulder, and had him read the email in front of me. And, you know, he would read it and be like, what does vulnerable mean? Or what does authentic mean? And we'd like Google the translation to like figure that out. And I just remember sweating profusely, having a fever. I had a migraine for like 3 days. It was really just a survival piece to have my dad, maybe he'll reject me, maybe I had no idea what to expect. And I remember him reading this email, and we had a conversation about it. And he said, okay, you know, like, got it. And then he asked for the website for ISTA. So I gave him the website. And one of the promotional videos is of me like running naked in a field and then gyrating sexual energy with one of the participants. And he's like, what is this? And that's when I got the reaction that I was afraid of. And we sat and processed for 3 days, and he asked all the questions he could possibly ask. And by the end of it, he said, okay, so my penis is not free, but if you want to free your penis, you free your penis. So,
words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom.
Great.
And it was just like, you know, I got the reaction that I was petrified of. like, you know, just being called different names and just not being understood, not being felt. And yet still by the end of it, it was agreeing to disagree in a loving way, and that I felt supported in that. And it wasn't that bad.
Great.
I survived. It was fine.
Yeah. So for our viewers who want to see you running through a field naked, go ahead and tell us what the ISTA website is.
The new website is www.ista.life.
Yeah, what's valuable for this, our book now, the subtitle is True Stories of Sexuality, Sacred Sexual Awakening. And it used to be actually Stories from the ISTA Tribe. That was the original subtitle, and it was Secret Lives of Sex Shamans. But as you know, when you publish, it's been a wonderful journey publishing with Inner Traditions. It's often in that journey a revealing of what people are ready for, what they're hearing, and too many beta readers are like, what's ISTA? So it may be that some people who are happening upon this book launch video are still in that question, what is ISTA? And I wanted to just invite them to check that out. It's the International School of Temple Arts, and we are each of us faculty members for this mystery school that's now in over 44 countries. So I think that's in and of itself. There's the book, and then there's the journey of what is ISTA, and I hope people get to discover and experience that for themselves. Good, and I see we have Mitsuko joining us a little bit late, but happy to have you. I think next in the question, we were going to go to Crystal Dawn. Is that right?
Yes. So my chapter starts out with me leaving home at 16, and it talks about a bit about how I met the man who became my husband and the father of my kids. And I don't know if he'll ever read it, but I am curious what he would think of what I wrote. I did ask his permission. And I also think what my grandchildren, who are between 22 down to 6 years old, will someday pick this book up and say, hey, this is my, this
Great.
they see me. But one thing years ago, about 15 years ago, I wrote a rough draft of a book about midwifery. And I remember after I finished the rough draft, there was this sense of when you publish something and it gets out there, you can never get it back. It's out there. It's the truth that was, your truth at that time, and you can never really pull it fully back again, especially nowadays with the internet, even more so. So I think there's still that piece of, this is super true for me at the time I wrote it. And I did read it recently, and I read it just very recently, and I said, oh, I really like this chapter. So there is that part of me that goes, well, okay, when 5 years from now, will I read that and go like, what was I thinking when I wrote that? So I think there's just that sense of, this is a slice of who I was, my history and who I was when I wrote that. And the recognition that it's relatively true, depending on what happens in the future, and that we are all a work in progress. So yeah, and then how that affects how people, the lens through which people see you. But I don't think I feel fear about it. I'm just excited and totally willing to clarify any questions people have about me after reading the chapter. And I think the other piece I want to bring out about the book that we haven't really spoken of is that the importance of knowing that at the end of each chapter, there's practices. So it's not only hearing these stories of people who've become sex shamans, but also there's actually practical tools that you can get from reading it that can help you to make that transformation, or that to take that journey for yourself. And I know a lot of people I work with feel called to the work after doing some of the trainings that we do in ISTA. So I just recommended it to someone today because she was asking me, how do I learn how to do this kind of work? And I was like, oh, well, you should read this book. It's got practical tools as well. So I want to make sure people know that.
Great point. Thank you. Yeah. And so, Mitsuko, to give you a little prep time to think about, the question where Laurie Handlers is about to share is, you're coming out about your deep personal story. Who are you most afraid about, or what impact might that have on someone? So let us know, what's the effect of coming out. Laurie.
Yeah, so well, I want to say this, and it'll be kind of funny that I say it this way, but because I almost never refer to age as any kind of a marker. But at my age, I really don't give a flying rat's ass what anybody thinks about the fact that I wrote in this book and that I came out about anything. One of the things I mention in my chapter is that at 67, I posed nude for a centerfold of a women's magazine that was making a play on like fun of Playboy and Penthouse and everything. And it was a women's sensual magazine. And I posed as the centerfold. And all the people I went to high school with know about it. Some of them bought it. My parents aren't alive anymore, so I don't have to worry about them and what they think. I don't care. I'm happy to be who I am in this world and to be free in the expression of the things that we're in expression of, we collectively. I had to rewrite the chapter because I was part of a community when I was first writing the chapter that's into physical immortality, and most people think I'm more crazy about that than they think I am about being a sex shaman. They can actually handle sexuality, but they can't handle the idea that people could live a very, very much longer time than has been. And so then I had to rewrite that because I left that community. So I don't care if they read it either, but there were names and things that I had to take out and edit because I just didn't want any ramifications that way. But other than that, so I changed it, and I still refer to radical life extension because I'm still an immortalist. So that's, to me, that's the thing that's the most controversial.
And it's part of what makes your story so compelling. I'm glad you're introducing people to that aspect of shamanism, because it really is a shamanic impulse to time travel and shape shift into the perfect template of your healthy body at every age. I love how you describe that.
Thank you. Exactly. And that's exactly what I use sex magic for, which is my most shamanic superpower. So if people want to know about that, they have to read this book and read my chapter for sure, because I'm using it to make my body keep going and keep going and keep going and to reverse aging. So thank you. I want to also make if you don't mind, I want to make a slight correction to something you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone in the book is a faculty member of ISTA, but they're all associated with ISTA in one way or another. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We have apprentices, we have priesties, we have muses. It's a tribe of very different, roles and aspects of this, mystery school. You're right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, go ahead and tell us what your chapter title is. Let's start there. Mitsuko.
I had to unmute, sorry. So, my chapter title. What is my chapter title?
You're the kinky queer witch of love.
Kinky queer witch. Of love,
Yeah. Your finger is over your camera.
Thank you. I'll switch hands. Yeah, I'm holding up an iPad, so it's kind of tricky. So, hi, it's really great to see your faces, guys. I miss you all. Just want to say that. Yeah, so what are we asking me? You want to know the ramifications, the concerns that I might have?
Since you're joining us late, just tell us something exciting, something that's in your heart about the book. Either it's a challenge or just what's alive for you.
Wow. So what's alive for me right now is I want to be able to hand the book to my daughter. And I'm I'm kind of nervous about that, but I've been wanting to introduce her to this work for years now, and to ISTA. And I'd love to hand her the book and have her read it and go, oh, or something that will give her the thrive that I know that she's aching for. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's kind of up for me right now. Yeah.
How old is your daughter?
She's going to be 37 next month.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And my granddaughter, her daughter, is just turned 13.
Oh,
So she's like coming into her time.
yeah, that's a magical time too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I will share that I think it's 20-year-old niece, she just turned 20, got her hands on the book, not because I gave it to her, but my mother had it on the coffee table. I give all my books to my mom, who's Mexican, and she was illiterate for most of her life. And her response is usually, oh, perfect. I'll put it in the bathroom and I'll use it as when I run out of toilet paper. Like that's her response to most of my writing because she thinks it's so dirty. But my mother said, this is the best thing that you've worked on. And she was actually proud and put it on the coffee table. And that's where my 20-year-old niece, who is from a very conservative, even Trump supporting family. And my mom's like, oh, she was, hiding and giggling. And she actually said, I'm old enough now and can read my auntie, they call me Thea's books. And I got flushed and I'm like, wow. But the thing I know, which a lot of people are also finding, is that the new generations are ready for this in a way that the world never was. And what touches me the most about this work is that had we, this collective of co-authors and the movement that we're a part of, had we been born, just a decade, 50 years, 100 years earlier, like all of us would be stoned or drowned or burnt at the stake. There's a sense of like, we were born now because the world's ready and we can actually sing this song, tell this message to the world. And the message is one, it's not this radical, controversial, heresy, like hedonistic teaching of pleasure. It's one of how natural and how much it's everyone's birthright, that we come from sexuality, and that as we harness this sexual energy, we can actually become gods and goddesses, like creators of our own reality, because we know how to use the creative life force energy. And that message in every different, flavor and way is designed to empower the reader and to empower them not to do it my way or Rafael's way or Ria's way. It's like, I believe the authenticity that each author transmits gives the reader a glimpse of their own true north and a glimpse of like, oh, let me strip away, every conditioning, programming, facade. Let me find the guides to help me really be my own full expression and come to do what I'm here to do. So that's been, that's been the exciting thing for me, is to see the permission that it gives to the reader and every beta reader. And just, this is really just our first few weeks since the books hit the stands. And all the feedback I've gotten is like, whoa, whoa, this is quite a ride. So we really hope that you get the book, you tell your friends, you allow yourself to go on the journey of not just our stories, but also the deep meditations and visualizations and journaling and breath, movement, sound exercises that we all, practice and recommend for the reader. So excited to see what transformation results. Well, beautiful. It's been a really sweet and like like I want more like teaser of a book launch with you all virtually. So if you have a final word, let's say our goodbyes, and hopefully we'll be in touch through ista.life or just send us some feedback, each of us directly feedback after reading our chapter. We'd love to hear from our readers. So.
I wanted to say I work for the LIA Fund, which supports young people doing ISTA. And a big part of that is actually I want to recommend the book as an introduction, and I want to enable more cultures, more like young people to actually get access to this work also through that book. So maybe the book is actually an easier way for a lot of young people to read the story, figure out what they're going to do with their lives, and then take a next step.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, for young or old, like all walks, it's really like that's what the life force path is. So I'm glad that we have everyone representing at every stage of the spectrum. Yeah, the world needs this, so excited to be a part of it. Good. So let's just close out with a final word from your heart. What's arising for closure?
For me, it feels like this book has launched at the perfect time. It's the perfect time for this to be revealed to the world, because there is a big, deep calling all over the globe for this. And so here we are. I'm so excited.
Aho.
I can go next.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just super excited for this first edition that's coming out, and I know we're planning on more, that people can really get a sense that this is a broad group of people from a lot of different walks of life, and that I believe that shamanism is part of our natural heritage, that we're all shamanic at heart, and that to bring sexuality and shamanism together in this way is just like such a just like my heart is singing, because this has been my whole life journey since I was a small child, knowing that I could talk to trees and plants and they talked back, and that's always involved my sexuality. And so I just keep meeting more and more people who feel the calling, and now we can actually say, here is a book about it, you're not alone, because I think so many people who have that calling have felt so alone. And this is what really touches me. And I also just want to say, KamalaDevi, I so appreciate you for being the midwife.
Oh, yeah.
It really touches me so deeply. Thank you.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
I want to say I'm very excited. I also love, we didn't say this, but I love that the cover was designed by Mookie Okan, who also was a sex shaman who's no longer with us. But the design is phenomenal, and it's one of Mookie's wonderful pieces of art. And I want to say, in regard to what Mia's just shared, that I'm planning an ISTA over 50 and in 2021, because there's a lot of older people who don't want to take their clothes off or explore their sexuality in front of 20 and 30 somethings. They feel too embarrassed. They feel like their body's out of shape, but we're providing something for everyone. So so that's on the horizon. It's being created now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I can go next. So the word that comes to me with this book is aha. And to really, read everyone's stories, and for the reader to get their own aha, that maybe they can see themselves in some of our stories, but in their own version, and recognize that perhaps they can reframe some experiences that have happened in a way that is deeply meaningful and is beyond just what the eye means. And to be open to that mystery.
Aha.
What I'd like to say is that I know the people that wrote the chapters of this book very intimately. They're my brothers and sisters and companions in life. and just the amount of life force that's there in each of these people, and that's condensed and essentialized in each of the chapters. It's just like pretty crazy. I see this book as a bomb of life force that's going to, as soon as you open it, it's going to like come out and reach wherever you are. So I really hope you enjoyed.
Beautiful. Sweet. So if everyone's said something for closure, I know we got a little glimpse of Crystal Dawn. So this is a thank you for joining us for closure, Crystal, or Dawn Cherie. So sweet to see your face. Did you want to say hello and goodbye? She might just be a voyeur on our call. But I will say, Dawn Cherie wrote the Goddess of the Underworld chapter, and takes us into a deep journey into the womb and into the desert and into the mysteries. So that'll be a fun enticement for you to read her chapter particularly. So thanks for showing up. All right, big love to all of you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.